We are really happy. Welcome, Keerthi, and another great experience being offered by Anurag. You'll hear more about GTM from him. But how many of you are familiar with what TIE is all about? Okay, so there's enough people who are not quite familiar. TIE stands for the International Entrepreneur. It started about 33 years ago, right here in Santa Clara, at a time where the room didn't always look like us. And so it was really started with the idea of fostering entrepreneurship and connecting founders and innovators and entrepreneurs with investors. And over the years, it's proven we don't need that special treatment anymore and special affinity groups. And so what we've evolved to is really an international community, but our mission to foster entrepreneurship is steadfast. And we really do believe that, what we need in an entrepreneurial system is not just the founders and the entrepreneurs and investors, but we definitely need the corporate executives because they're the ones who talk about what challenges they have. They're the ones who are making those first POC decisions and making sure that there is, product market fit. You will hear more about that from Anurag. And over the years, great metric, we've had 25,000 entrepreneurs go through the TIE ecosystem, created 2 million jobs in the United States and influenced about $1 trillion of wealth. We have right now about 1,600 general members and 230 odd charter members. Charter members are all of us who are standing here, part of the leadership team. Our job, charter members are those who are really giving back. We're a voluntary organization, except for the TIE team that is, working very hard. And we are the largest chapter. Last year, we had 83 engagements such as these and around many interesting topics. So the engagements for Funding Fridays, many of you have talked about that. Silicon Valley immersion programs where we get founders from all over the world. Last year, we had almost 270 odd founders who came in from different parts of the world to go through customized immersion programs anywhere between 3 to 5 days. VC Connect, Angels, so you'll see that, the whole ecosystem is working together, providing mentoring. Of course, the focus is on younger, newer entrepreneurs, and younger not just in age, but really younger in their journey. And that's why GTM and the programs that Anurag is doing are really important. So next, I just want to share with you that we now have 67 chapters over 14 countries, and we've really got a bullseye focus on the entrepreneur. It's not a membership organization, it's a mission-driven organization. It means if there is something to be done for an entrepreneur, we want to be there to make sure, whether it is getting knowledge in front of them, whether it's making sure that they get their Series A plus funding through Funding Fridays, pre-seed through our Seed Angels group, providing mentoring. And Anurag will talk more about the GTM, but we can just go to the next slide. And bunch of different things that have been going on. Special focus on women, though I feel there needs to come a day when we don't do that special focus and we just are there, because even today we are just there, as you will hear from our speaker. So moving on, this was TIECon last year, and we had everyone from Jensen Huang to Nikesh Arora, and the lineup was just amazing. Some special sponsors, lots of good focus, and it just gets better. Now, a lot of people ask me, how are you going to beat that? Well, we are. We just announced our first grand keynote, and that is Shantanu Narayan from Adobe. Earlier today, we announced our second grand keynote, and that's Vasu Jakal, because of how important cybersecurity is. And as many of you may know, she reports directly to Satya Nadella. And then moving on, lots of fun, new emerging conversations from thought leaders, right? So some new tracks, automotive and mobility. There's going to be conversations around drones, around auto tech. Enterprise AI always, people wonder, all the talk was about Gen AI and chatbots the last 2 years, and then last year a bit on agentic AI, and now this year it's really, why isn't the adoption of AI going as fast as we thought in the world of enterprise? So there's going to be some amazing folks here. I don't think I'm at liberty to share with you that CEOs from the likes of companies like Glean and others are going to be there to share their perspective. And then, of course, the larger enterprises are going to be there as well to share their perspective. Manufacturing and supply chain, and of course, if you've been reading, and I know all of you have been, for the last month and a half, all this focus on deep tech and quantum and so on. So there is going to be conversations around that. Defense, drones, and space tech. The next war is not going to be folks like us running around with guns and patent tanks, but it's going to be really in cyberspace. And so a lot of focus on space tech and cybersecurity. Media and entertainment, really important. I can't get on a plane until I've downloaded a few things from Netflix and YouTube. So we've got Shalini Govil-Pai, who heads up Google TV. She's leading that track. The track chairs are doing a great job in just, giving some thought leadership. Most importantly, our programs, which is the day before the first day of TiECon. We have a TiE 50 pitch. If those of you who are startups and founders in this group, please stay tuned. There will be an email, and 3 weeks before TiECon, we'll close and the rounds will begin. This year, we're also introducing an M&A and PE Connect lounge. So for many of you who have actually accelerated in revenue, that's a good one. And also, if there's something else to call out, NVIDIA is offering, last year, we were completely sold out on the NVIDIA workshop. This year, they're doing a full day workshop. So, look out for that.
And we're doing a GTM.
Sorry.
Right on the first.
Well, of course, thank you. That's why you're here. You're going to hear more about it from Anurag. And there's actually going to be lots of opportunity for GTM throughout the conference. There's going to be a very dedicated 3-4 hour program. And then on the following 2 days, there's going to be a shorter segment, so that people don't miss out on that discussion. And, talking of pricing, how could we not talk about pricing today? Get your passes today. It's this price is available only till the end of February. 1 week before TiECon, that price will go up to $1,099. I'll leave it to Keerthi to give me a lesson on pricing, whether we did this right or not.
Sure.
But we were doing this. But over to both of you. Thank you very much. And enjoy this. And please come back. And next time you will be sitting in a more comfortable space. Thank you.
Neat. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Anurag, and I'm here with a good friend and a guest, Keerthi, to discuss a very important topic that we started talking about 6 months, almost a year ago. Keerthi and I did a webinar on this topic that got picked up, and we thought we'll have a follow-on conversation on AI and pricing. But as a way of introduction, today's topic is how to price and bundle AI capabilities. And the way we're going to cover is that we will go through a set of frameworks together. And as we pause after a few frameworks, I'll ask some questions. We'll have a conversation around it. Since we have the advantage of a small group, what's on your mind? Please bring the questions, and we will follow along and have that conversation. So that's kind of fairly informal. The goal is to have some productive conversation, hear from you. And we will use the set of slides as a guidepost for us to make progress. Okay, so just as Keerthi, you want to introduce a little bit about yourself before we talk about the frameworks and all?
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, thank you to you, Anurag, and to the team here for inviting me. Very nice to meet you all. Would love to know, the industries that you guys are involved in and what kind of things that you guys do, because of course pricing is not, it's not one little thing that fits all. So quick intro about me. I've been doing pricing for more than 15 plus years. Dabbled around different industries, started off in oil and gas and moved on to private equity from there, and then was in big tech. And my last gig, of course, is with Freshworks, which is very interesting because I was the inaugural, or rather the first pricing person, which was very daunting, to say the least. It was also an industry that was up and coming, which is both CX and, IT service management, which is all the talk right now with AI. I think these two industries are, best fit for those conversations. Slowly built the team, slowly made sure also our leaders understood how strategic pricing is as a topic. I think it's fairly looked, on the other side, especially when you're having annual operating plan conversations and all of it. But today it has become a very strategic piece, and it has taken center stage almost in all conversations. Given AI, I think is the real pull in every single piece of the business. So we're happy to discuss pricing and mental models that we went through to build pricing actions in Freshworks. We've done, I believe, more than 70 plus pricing actions in the last 3 years, given how dynamic these industries have been. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Keerthi. I'll do a quick setup for what the GTM Accelerator is and my role in this. I've been a long-time operator. Recently, I moved to full-time advisory and coaching and consulting for founders and CEOs. I've been doing that for a few years. As a volunteer, I chair the GTM practice or GTM chair programs for TIE. And in that spirit, what I'm doing is putting some courses together for TIE that I've been running outside of TIE as well. So you can follow my Substack where I talk about it. I have a series of self-guided video courses, and I run on Maven, which is a program online for operators. I teach a boot camp, 8-week boot camp on product market fit, as well as on GTM scaling. And I'm also running GTM clinics for founders here. And once a month, decided to do these kind of topics. I call them hot topics that we cover. So we GTM product market fit bootcamp, which is online with office hours conducted over here. 8 weeks, runs every 8 weeks. We're in the midst of the second cohort, and we'll be starting another one soon. More of a customized clinics for growth stage founders and monthly topics like the ones we are talking today. So we have already had some on positioning and value props, and today we are talking pricing. So with that context, I'm going to just set up a few slides around what I think are the pricing challenges, why pricing is much more difficult and hot subject today with AI, and what has changed with that. First setup is very simple. For last 20 years, since advent of SaaS from Salesforce and so forth, this is the canonical business value ladder. If you go and look at how SaaS gets implemented in any company in B2B, typically you have software being used by users. Take any software, whether it's NetSuite or any other SaaS software, Workday, and you have all of these users focused on productivity. That's what they spend hours on, getting the job done, so to speak. And then you have maybe the team and the bundle of users collectively focusing on collaboration. The tasks get created from the software, either through the software or through other outside processes get shared. And then there's a buyer who's writing the check for every year on millions of dollars of Salesforce or whatever your commitment is to the stack. And the goal is to hopefully get some value out of it and hit some goals. The challenge with this is that if you look at the value ladder, this all depends on how tasks are driven. And if you look at the SaaS pricing today, right, it comes down to seat-based pricing or usage-based pricing, right? And these are stats from recent times. There are tiered, of course. The tiers come down to a buyer wanting to have some control over the budget, so they will settle on a tier. But fundamentally, it's a combination of how much I'm using and how many seats. That's kind of is that reflection of what the current SaaS worldview looks like before you insert AI?
Definitely. I think you've summarized it very crisply here. overall, when we look at pricing models, and if I can just spend a couple of minutes, right? With pricing models, they're just very simple, straightforward steps. It's very important to have playbooks and to have a method to the madness, because once you start going into every single ICP or every single application you want to solve, you're just going to go after like thousands of different models, and it just is not applicable to be able to operationalize these kind of, chaos that we'll end up having. So just 3 simple steps, right? One is, what is the value for the product? Leave alone, what are the different problems you're trying to solve? What is the value it's going to be providing to your customer base? What is that product really going to be doing? That's number one. And we can quantify it, do qualitative models, and so on and so forth. The second piece is where Anurag's really emphasized here is something we call its pricing metric. You can call it as value metric, people say it different ways. But when you take your value metric to be very aligned to your business and your business needs, whether it is agent-based, seat-based, usage-based. I mean, today, with chatbots and AI, it's all about resolution-based, outcome-based. It's all different fancy words, but end of the day, what is that metric that we're trying to solve? And then, from there, how will you end up upselling these customers with pricing logic, right? That's so critical as companies, scale from a startup and you move on into upmarket. It's not just having new customers enter your funnel, but how do you end up upselling those customers? Ultimately pricing is not static at all. It is so dynamic that we just have to keep changing with it. So that would be something that I highlight, just kind of bringing it all together here.
Now, when Freshworks started, even before you joined Freshworks, it was pretty standard seat-based pricing, right?
It was.
Back in the day when they went IPO and so forth, right?
Yeah. So funnily enough, we have our flagship product called Freshdesk, which I hope you all have heard of. We actually, up until last year, had not even touched the pricing for 8 years.
Yeah.
For 8 years, leave alone the metric, but just the number.
Yeah.
So that is so funny that people think that you can just change pricing overnight. It is so hard. You have 60,000 customer base, and for you to just go tomorrow and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to change it to outcome-based pricing, that it just does not happen that way.
It's funny you say that, because it's so critical that a company can go from like Series A, B, and go all the way through IPO, and having a very stable pricing metrics and the way the value gets generated. Once you have that lock and the engine starts building, it's not easy to switch. So I think that's a realization. But here is the challenge I want to set up.
Two questions on the
Sure,
previous slide.
of course.
So, yeah. So we're not talking about AI in this one.
No, this is current state.
Current state.
I've not set up the challenge yet.
Sure, okay.
Right.
And the second question I have is that when you say data volume,
These are various ways. Some company might say my usage is based on data. Some might say number of API calls. Some might say storage, number of gigabytes. Those are just depending upon your product and the business you're in. That's how you meter it.
the number of transactions per day.
Yeah, exactly.
A quick question there. So if instead of S as a service,
Yeah,
if it was X, something else, system, hardware,
Platform.
yeah.
I was with a meatball company for 2 decades.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious,
Yeah.
how would this page differ?
Sorry, what was
If you think of X as a service, system as a service, hardware as a service, how would this page differ from a pricing perspective?
Yeah. So right now, our focus is on software and B2B software.
Yeah.
Right? So that's it. If you go beyond that, you have a different set of challenges of pricing.
Yeah.
I come from a CPG background in my previous incarnation. So over there, a lot of other variables go in outside of software.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm gonna stick to software because that's where some of the AI challenges come in. So
It is actually some combination of this, what you're
Yeah.
asking, like how we price our hospital
Yeah.
healthcare software is by capacity per year. Whether they use their ED bed or
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
we still charge them for
Yeah.
it. And then we charge them based on how many patients they treated.
so that's a
Because they are
combination
paying
of
their
combination of the
insurance money.
capacity.
Yeah.
Like, it's a
So
combi.
usage is capacity I have reserved for you.
Yeah,
Whether
that's
it
the
is
industry dynamic
Yeah,
now, right?
yeah.
That in order to get to the values, the software layer is the value creator. but it might require an infrastructure layer that comes below that.
Mhm.
And you got to think of pricing it together, and gets really complex in established pricing models to come to something different.
No,
Because you've trained the user in a
Yes,
particular
yes,
way.
yes.
If you are, born new, it's a different world, right?
Yes.
Coming from the legacy world, that
Exactly.
becomes really challenging.
Just to
Yeah.
add to that, I truly believe in frameworks and models that work across industries.
Yeah.
I've been in oil and gas, I was in big tech. Fundamentally, once, the product value is very defined,
Yeah.
and then a pricing metric should be attached to that. For example, like you said, whether it's capacity, and then you price it based on beds or however that it is. It's very similar, I believe, in software. And to your problem of
Yeah.
the complexity layer,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're facing in AI today.
Yeah.
You have your fundamental agent-based models.
Yeah.
Now you have AI
Yeah.
coming into play. So then the complexity is, okay, how do you then price AI?
Yeah.
Because up until 2 weeks ago, it was very expensive, and today it may not be expensive.
Exactly.
So they're fundamentally, I think
metric.
there's a lot of parallels.
It does become cheaper. So when we were charging by capacity, it was all fine. It was per patient use. Every time they use the software, they pay for it. With agentic AI, we are replacing a nurse. So now we can only price them at 50% of the value of the nurse. They were hiring 3 nurses per hospital. So we are pitching them the price of cost of one nurse
Yeah.
recurring per year. But that's not adequate for us because it actually brings down our price.
So this
So
is such
agentic AI is not helping us.
exactly right. And part of the challenge, which I'm going to set up a little bit, is the following. Software, if you look at the history of software, very few companies have been able to do pricing based on capacity or others. It's 90% of it is value-based pricing.
Value-based pricing.
Right? If it's value-based, then the fact that you have a cost structure typically of hardware or capacity or beds, that over time in software at least, because of the marginal costs coming down, it doesn't hold.
No, we are doing things like we are pushing the compute cost onto them, saying, no, we are not going to host it, you are going to host it.
Sure.
So,
sure.
yeah, there is some cost structure being moved that justifies bringing down the cost, but it is still needs some thought process here. It cannot be that we are replacing the nurse.
Yes.
Your nurse used to take 8 hours to do the job that my software does 8 minutes to do it. There is value right there. How do we quantify that value?
So, at a very high level, and this is just me reading about pricing AI products for the last 2+ years. And in summary, what I would say, and there could be several arguments and debates about this, is that it is not a zero-sum game between humans and AI, right? Your TAM will likely increase. There's just going to be more opportunities for both sides of the spectrum. We cannot solve applications based on the fact that, profitability will get hit. The number of agents that you will use will have to multiply, right? And the more harder, or what we call in the CX side, the L3 or L4, much difficult applications will move to humans, which have to be relatively priced higher. So net, it has to go high. It is not a zero-sum game that, it's displacing.
I agree. So what we are doing actually is we are replacing the nurses with 1 hour of a surgeon or a physician and saying, you give us 1 hour a week instead of me hiring a nurse for the whole month. So that's also happening, but that's.
So here's the challenge I think we are underestimating with AI. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So far in SaaS, we are not used to adding intelligence in SaaS, right? And suddenly we have a completely new paradigm with AI that intelligence can be added at every level of the SaaS stack, which is why so much of pricing is getting confused. Here's the challenge, let me tell you. The value gap in SaaS for the last 20 years, the value gap is what buyer buys the SaaS for versus what users use the SaaS for is completely different things. If I pay $1 million a year for, let's say, Workday, or better yet, for Salesforce, right? I'm the buyer. I want for $1 million optimization of my pipeline, opportunity, CRM, right? Whereas what I have implemented is 1,000 sales reps banging away at it and hoping that some input that they put in is going to translate into better lead volume. So
Doesn't happen.
the challenge with SaaS is that the intelligence, this is what human intelligence feedback loop is outside of SaaS. Really internalize that. Because if you take this example, this is an example of customer service center running purely on SaaS without AI, right? If you want to save 50% of your cost savings while maintaining CSAT, what's going to happen is you will have to say, my agents are handling tickets, my teams are doing the agent workflow, and my head of customer service is managing metrics like first call resolution, average handling time, etc. If this stack is broken, it's not working, and you're not hitting your cost numbers or your CSAT is wrong, what do? You go back and say, well, let's train the agents on better scripts. Let's do better routing. Let's make sure the dashboards are working. You see the whole feedback loop is outside of the stack. So you're going to retrain the agents outside. You're going to retrain the workflow outside, and you're going to redo the dashboards outside. This is the central reason why SaaS is getting hit so badly with AI. Now, what happens is that AI can bridge the gap in two ways. And I want to hear from you on that. One is take your current pricing, start doing pricing actions that are AI infused, like let's take this, right? You can increase AI in a way that increases user productivity, or it can increase team collaboration, or it can increase your dashboards. So what you're doing is you're injecting AI within your app at every level, at the UX, at the user level, at the collaboration level, at the buyer level. And you're hoping that a little bit of AI sprinkled into the current architecture, current use case is going to improve. So you're not radically, to your point, we're not saying, I have 60,000 users. I'm not going to radically change everything to outcome-based pricing because my entire customer install will fall. So I need to incrementally layer on AI at every level. That has its benefits because now you're improving productivity, collaboration, and decision-making. But you're not effectively being as disruptive as you could be with AI. So that's the current state of AI. And this was from your study, right? So that just by, you can speak to how just by increasing user productivity alone, without doing any disruption to the overall stack, you can still gain a lot of value.
Yeah. So, again, in summary of all of this, especially with CX, and I'm hoping some of you or most of you all are in the customer service industry because it's very relevant with the AI space. At least in our space, we have, AI is a very broad term. There are chatbots and then there are AI, right? Chatbots have been around for 15 to 20 years. There's not a lot of cost imputed to them. So therefore, it's a very direct correlation to productivity and you keep your costs low. Now, AI in terms of generative AI, which you see a lot of co-pilots. I mean, just in Freshworks, I think we have 6 co-pilots today. So that is very different in terms of raising human productivity, right? I mean, even this was done by MIT about 2 years ago when it was all the rage about chatbots, whereby it's very easy to derive what that productivity rate for an agent or for capacity or whatever that might be. It's very directly, there's an output to it. What I've seen to be successful with AI, again, is upselling. I just, want to be so clear on like what could be success today with AI. You have a customer base, however small or large it might be. Making your current model a little bit more hybrid in terms of how you could change, models for existing customers. They have the palette to use and try adjacent products who have already used your ecosystem. That is where I believe, the fastest success rate is. I think for net new customers, the pricing models are just evolving like crazy. In fact, just yesterday, I had about an 8-hour session with our CX leaders because now costs have dropped like 90%. Customers are asking, why is my Copilot still $29? Give me the reason why. It's not, as a public company, at least, not that easy to just go change pricing every 6 months, right? So what is our strategy?
Keerthi, coming back to your first point, I want to double click on that. When you say the fastest way today is to just layer on for current customers some value add, are you in that example adding AI capability as a line item incremental to your base product? Or are you saying my base product is now up-leveled because AI is everywhere?
No.
How you discreetly,
Customers output, sorry. So how we are doing it is, we are replacing 3 nurses with a AI agent. Yes, they were taking certain amount of time to extract quality of care that a hospital has provided.
Yeah.
And it's reported to CMS. CMS compensates them because they achieved a certain level of quality of care. Now what we are saying is, okay, we'll charge you, you are putting 3 nurses, we will provide you all the expertise, you don't have to hire any nurse. And our AI will give you up to 95% accuracy with it. By the way, when your accuracy becomes 95% from 85% where you are at, your return on CMS is going to increase, your reimbursements are going to increase by this much percentage. That's where we are trying to quantify so that we can tell them when you reach from 85 to 95, 20% of your additional reimbursement comes to us.
so this value model that you've built with this, is that something your pricing is based on which of the metrics here?
We cannot tell them that you show us your books.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Exactly.
They are not willing to show
Exactly.
books.
Exactly.
Even the original pricing, when we established the pricing, we used to go to them and say, you will do 20% more patients. We'll guarantee you will do that 20% more patients. Whatever is your additional revenue from 20% patients, of that revenue, you keep 80%, 20% you give it to us. They'll be very happy to engage. When time comes to buy it, CFO says, I'm not going to show you my books.
So this is very important.
Now, how are you going to price it? Then they will say, okay, now it is by capacity.
So this is where, for 25 years, whether it's SAP, whether it's I2, many of the companies, value-based selling has been around for a long time,
Yeah.
right? So going in, selling a big value is not to be confused with pricing on value,
Correct.
right? So what is changing with AI is that value-based selling is no longer effective because of the same reason. Because what you're saying is, I've seen the value models, I've seen the revenue projection models, but the CFO says, okay, ultimately I'm gonna still go back to seat, price, usage,
Exactly.
right? So that's a
So now
challenge.
we have changed it to say number of patients that you report on, you're going to pay us this much.
You know, it's very relevant. Pricing models are very relevant to industries, right? You have to solve for what is relevant for you. For us, for example, we have two strong business arms in Freshworks. One is the IT side, one is the CX. Very different. The co-pilots and the AI is priced entirely different. In fact, we just GA'd our, today, we released our enterprise AI product as well. We cannot use the same framework for CX. It's just irrelevant, right? Because your value, your opportunity assessment, who the user is, who we're even going to be talking and knocking on the door is entirely different from an IT to a CX person, right? So, you know, for example, CX, chatbots have been there forever. And they are only add-on based, they're only usage. I mean, look from intercom to ServiceNow.
Exactly.
Maybe they might have made it more into resolution based, you know, where, you know, the platforms are so strong that there'd be, I'll resolve this entire interaction and thereby I will charge you 90 cents on this. There is, you know, ebbs and flows with that, but predominantly it is usage based. On the employee side, you know, with ITSM, it's very different. It is based on per employee. They don't like, you only have 3 or 4 different cycles that you go through in a month, whereby in CX, for, you know, I can share numbers, but it's billions and billions of interactions that you do. So it's entirely industry basics, right?
Is interaction the only key way that differentiates CX from IT? The IT side I get, right? Because that's been around for so long. The CX side, and especially the impact of AI and agentic AI, feels a lot more disruptive and unclear to me in terms of how that value creation translates into pricing. I'm curious how those models differ.
Yeah, you know, for me, it's almost the opposite because I can look at it from a data perspective.
Yeah.
Employee-based is far more newer. I mean, I don't know if people have heard of MoveWorks, you know, super disruptive in the employee space. They actually have tried a very different pricing model to what, you know, Anurag and I have discussed thus far, is they just base it on the number of employees. You know, you are a 20,000 employee company, it is per employee, and they'll give you everything, right? All the AI. Coming to the CX side, there are multiple ways in terms of how you can define that metric. Again, chatbots in the CX space have been around for 15 years. Of course, and there's such real life examples. I mean, Delta, flights, they are our customers. So, when you're chatting with a Delta, chatbot, you're literally using, a product, which is our, our AI product, right? So the way that the usage is captured is different. For example, we call it as conversation. So, I say hi to the chatbot, you say hi back. Each of that is a conversation. But as AI is also imputed within the chatbots and the LLMs get much more smarter with the data that the customer is willing to share with us, then you then go on into saying that I will resolve this entire conversation. Keerthi is going to Delta and saying she wants to change her flight tomorrow. And the chatbot works with me to complete the entire question. And there are ways to measure if I was routed to the billing to be able to take my credit card. It does the entire loop and it comes back and it says that, this particular conversation is resolved. And so therefore there's a value attached to that resolution. And there could be multiple ways that you could, do that. For example, Intercom does a fantastic job. They are the creme de la creme in terms of doing AI pricing. Because again, they're a private company. They only go towards the enterprise stack. It's a very tight ICP that they have, and the models work very, very in particular to that space. So it's very difficult to attribute value and to be able to say that, oh, would this particular AI product work for medical and for IT and for CX? It's just impossible.
Going back to your Delta example, you're charging per conversation or per say transaction, per resolution. Whether the resolution was successful or unsuccessful, how do you measure that?
So every company, this is where it goes back to the value metric, and you have to publish it very explicitly on how you define that closure of that conversation. We at Freshworks don't want to take on the responsibility to close the entire loop, right? Because we are an SMB and mid-market space company. Now, an Intercom says that they have all of the capabilities to measure the entire loop. So thereby they're 10x more expensive than us. Be at it, right? But we say, I say hi and you say hi, that is a conversation.
Okay, so
Within a 24-hour peak.
The reason I'm asking that is when a hospital uses the AI agent, reports the metrics to CMS. If their metrics are above a certain value, CMS compensates them more. I want to way to measure that they got more compensation, so I'm going to take a bigger percentage of it. How do I introduce that in AI? How do I price that?
So where I'm hearing, talking to many of the companies, couple of them in customer success, is that there are levels of metrics. And you need to, based upon how much control you have of the stack. In case of Freshworks, you don't have as much. Intercom has a much richer stack, much deeper integration into the data, much bigger control on the model. So depending upon how well and completely you can control the outcome, you need to focus on the highest level of outcome you are willing to put your money and mouth on, which is different than in the previous time. Like I have a seat, I have an interaction. It is basically, if you look at ad tech technology 20 years ago, there's a CPM, CPA, like there's a risk profile, right? You can do display, I don't care whether conversion happens. You have to go down the risk and say what level of risk of the outcome you're willing to take. And that's the biggest shift that's happening in AI, because with AI, you're adding intelligence, but are you willing to stand behind the intelligence, or are you saying, I just threw some intelligence in, good luck, everything else is the same, right? So this is the biggest shift. The bigger shift, if you're doing AI optimization, which means you're taking your current pricing and you're goosing it with a little bit of AI metrics and AI capability, you will optimize. There's no doubt you can do personalized pricing, segmentation. Every user gets a slightly nuanced price. I would like to hear that level of personalization or revenue optimization. That's within the confines of your current model. That can still have a huge effect, right? Which is optimizing your current pricing metrics, right? The real challenge is when you get to goal-oriented. And medium term, this is where the transformation of AI comes. And not every company is ready for it. I don't mean the vendors, I mean the client, right? Especially if you are in regulated industry, especially if you are in industry where they're not willing to take the risk and they're not willing to reorganize the org structure. And the reason that is completely different is that with AI, you can go straight after a goal. Unlike SaaS, you have to go up the stack, making users do tasks and then do some outcome sharing and hopefully some dashboards start influencing. In this case, you're saying I'm going straight for the outcome. Outcome can be conversation resolution. Outcome can be, cost saved. I have companies that are doing, patient authorization, very precise cost of patient authorization, right? Or a manufacturing detection, like very precise, no argument. I'm gonna detect in a machine a particular defect. So you are actually choosing in a use case a highly measurable metric. And now you're saying is I'm gonna point my entire AI stack to that, right? And that's really what's different about AI. And it's not as much as your ability to inject AI, as much as your client's ability to absorb it. And agree with you on that.
So actually, I would say it's also on a different spectrum. Sorry.
Yeah.
So there are customers who are putting out an RFP saying, I cannot hire enough nurses. They call them nurse abstractor. There is a type, there's a role that's called nurse abstractor. All they do is go into HR and pull out stuff. I replace it with the AI. Certain customers are saying, yeah, that's possible. They are putting out an RFP. There are other customers where we said, this is what we do. They said, you're here to take away our jobs, get out of it.
Yeah.
Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
There is a whole spectrum out there.
This is so important, what Chandra said, is because you can demarcate within the industry also by client. By client, what their appetite is for risk and change, right? And this is a slightly different framework. This is a framework, what I think would be AI native framework, meaning if you were building a company from scratch around AI and you could migrate as a large company slowly, but if you were building a company on AI first, and many of the companies I work with are building some version of this because you have the clean slate advantage. And over there, what you're doing is, first of all, you have to go after more agile companies. Even if you're going within regulated industries, you have to find people who are willing to take a risk, right? That's what you're saying. But what's interesting is what exactly is happening over here that AI is doing. So rather than okay, you are the user, you are the buyer, and here's the workflow. What you're doing something different. What you're doing is you're pairing humans and AI. You see, in your case, you can have a nurse, but at low level, you might say, I'm automating and I'm not even, that's a given. The fact that if there's a trivial task and you can automate it, people are fixated on that. But what's happening is that there's a stack coming up on the top. You can have somebody who can say, I needed 100 nurses, now I'll take only 10, and they will be playing the role of a supervisor of 90 that have been automated. So the role is now changing. No longer are you doing the same. You are now becoming the expert in automating, and now you've up-leveled your own skill. You go one level up, which is more of a cognitive work. Then you are actually collaborating. You're a research analyst. You might not have a junior research analyst. You might have a senior research analyst, but now they have trained model with AI and they're collaborating. They are doing research reports. So that's the next level up. And they have their own agents, just like the automation agents are different. At the highest level, you are running an entire process and you are just putting guardrails and governance, like automated trading, automated driving. So what's happening is that what used to be, SaaS stack is now getting replaced by like this stack, right? And the challenge of this is the following. Once you go down here, you can create an agile team and say this team will go directly after the goal. Like in your case, we will go solve the cost issue. But the problem is if the goal is not clear, you don't know how to price it. If the goal is we will save you $1 million, nobody cares, nobody's going to audit it. So the value-based selling that used to happen is no longer working.
Yeah.
Because we used to go sell decks and say, hope that somehow you will be responsible
Yeah.
for the value of the
Yeah.
deck I sold you.
Yeah.
But my pricing is still usage and consumption based.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gone.
But that's the
Skin in
task
the game.
value dissonance, right?
But that's the skin in the game. The new
Yeah.
players are coming out and saying, forget the value-based selling. I'm telling you, I'll charge you by the outcome.
Yeah.
Are you ready to give me the risk?
So
If
the
you're not
person
ready
comes
to give
in, right, like, they won't share the outcome.
So this is where the adoption changes, right? So for example, in coming back to her example, in customer success, I'm seeing different companies choose a different outcome. Like she was saying, you were giving an example of a conversation. My definition of a conversation is if a chatbot pops up and says, hi, you give me 1 cent.
Yeah.
That's one outcome. Somebody might say, no, I will give you an outcome of a better CSAT.
Yeah.
Better CSAT score at the end of 5 conversations. Suddenly the outcome is now higher, but my risk is more. Now I need to have more control on your stack.
Actually, in the same customer, based on the role of the person you're talking to at the customer, their end value is different. And then when you go for pricing, the guy who's approving the pricing, his value is completely different.
Yeah.
So the AI agent pricing is one of the hardest things to do actually, because we are dealing with it right now. I have 3 channel partners asking for pricing in 3 different ways.
Exactly.
And I have private hospitals, the government, county hospitals, and the federal hospitals all asking for different prices.
Yeah.
I think your point earlier of if you control the stack, right? The more control you have of the stack, the more control you have of the value, and therefore the more
It's
control you
not
have.
an
of
accident.
You can have
Yeah.
How
control
will
on
you
the
still
stack,
measure that?
even then,
So,
we have a
yeah.
complete control on the stack.
You think you have control, they don't. Because
But
if
some of
they
it is
had
risk.
it,
Some of
they
it is
give you the
risk. The
pricing,
3
yeah.
things, right? One is control on the stack.
Yeah,
Second is agreement on the outcome.
yeah,
And their ability to risk it with you.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the third, which we underestimate today, especially if you're a tech company, is that is the reason why services, software-defined services are coming up. Right? People, the Sequoia article around software, service as software.
Yeah.
The reason, another word for that is software-defined services,
Hmm.
right? The reason why that is happening is that you need to throw your own experts into the mix. And you need to say, I will give you $1 an outcome, but I will not bring AI agents. I will bring AI agents and my own team.
Hmm.
Because I need to control the whole stack and the process.
Yeah, so like when we are
But
offering
actually,
this,
how will people agree on this part of it, right? They say, I know my business better. Why should I get to hear it from you? Yeah, even if you say you're an expert.
no,
So
but
it
they are
depends on the
putting out
order.
an RFP with a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, they are put out an
Exactly.
RFP. We are going and saying, look,
No,
you
go
are
to the hospital and tell, okay,
Hmm.
I will
Yeah.
bring my own doctors
Yeah.
and solve, I'll bring my own
No, no,
I'm
nurses.
not bringing, I'm saying I am assigning these people. Here is the profile of the people who will be reviewing the output of this AI. You can get it better than that.
Exactly.
Well, why should I trust your
Yeah,
experts,
Because
right?
these
So-
experts are industry experts.
So
Like,
that's why it goes back to your point number 2 of you need agreement on the outcome.
Exactly.
Agreement on
Back to the
outcome,
consulting
exactly.
model, right?
So-
You add those experts, but you need agreement on outcome, which is
Bingo.
hard.
Bingo.
yeah.
Right?
Which is,
And this is where I think what you will see
Can I
will
just,
be.
can I drill down on this one?
Yeah.
So, like, you can always have a short-term outcome and
Yeah.
you can have a long-term outcome, right?
Yeah.
It may look like, whatever the tariffs we're trying to do it
Yeah.
may bring some short-term, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But long-term, it might hurt. Same thing. I may show some outcome right now, not trying to be political, so sorry
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
But my point here is like,
Yeah.
in short term, it might look like, I'm adding value. And the experts are there, but,
actually, it's not the short.
but in long term, right?
Yeah.
It might hurt me. How do I,
Yeah, so they are agreeing on the outcome part of it. They are not agreeing on the quantification of the outcome part of it. So if your care quality metrics are well defined, CMS publishes them. We are telling them your care quality will go up by 10%. Because your nurse abstractors are taking too long, are very erroneous, they are making mistakes. AI is not going to make mistakes. Plus, we are putting these reviewers there. We convince them of
you're
that.
making an assumption?
No,
You're
we have
making an
measured.
assumption.
No, we have
You're
measured.
making an assumption.
Yeah.
AI is not going to make a
Yeah,
mistake.
which you have to prove.
No, you can do that in POCs. You will
Yeah,
prove
yeah.
that in
No,
POCs.
that is fine. They will try it. They don't pay the whole amount
Yeah,
upfront.
yeah.
They'll try it and buy.
Yeah.
So that is all fine. But then if it improves by 10%, how much are your reimbursements improving? That they are not disclosing.
Yeah.
See, that's a industry by industry. That is why different industries will have different adoption rate of agents not because of the agents not being smart technically. It's because of this, because companies and use cases vary. And the vertical SaaS is rising because in vertical SaaS, you can go after some vertical specific use case and a metric. And to your observation, which is correct, you might start at a very low level and nobody's going to give you a very high metric, which is very strategic. That is why they will say, give me a cost saving in an operational area, which is not strategic to my company. And you can bring some services, you can bring some agents, run them together, deliver an outcome. So that's the reason why you see a mixture of services, human-assisted AI, going, even companies like Scale, which were pure stack, are now managed services. Palantir, which were pure tech, are now managed services, right? Because the more powerful the AI becomes, the higher up the stack it goes, the more you have to add some human expertise, your own nurse experts, as you call it.
We are actually adding head of quality of a complete healthcare system
There we
to
go.
give us 1 hour a week to review what is the output of that
Yeah.
data. And yes, he's not charging us anything because he is
Sorry,
a nice
there's
guy, but
there's
that's
a
a
question
different.
at the
Yeah,
back.
can you put a pin down on this aspect of human in the loop? There's a human in the loop concept, right?
Yeah,
So I was
exactly
just
right.
wondering, we are building a testing platform basically, a software testing platform that makes it super easy to generate test cases. And we have the same issue with the customer, how would we charge him? So we said that, okay, look, you can charge as many test cases as you can, but 70% of them are critical or like good enough, then you can pay us, otherwise you won't pay us, right? That's a very sort of but we always wondering where the human in the loop human is us, where we are running the test cases and we are looking.
Excellent question.
Or human in the loop on their side.
Their side.
On this.
So the way I would suggest is that if this is the canonical model, you don't know whether they have human on their side and chances are you will have in some cases, it'll be you are training their humans to get trained on your AI. In some cases, you will have your humans who will be trained on your AI to run metrics on yours. So the question is, who is doing the cognitive work, right? In some cases, you are training them. In some cases, you are bringing the person who is running it for
So
them.
this is more on the services or software side, right? Because now you are actually as a consulting company, you are saying that first of all, consulting company is like how many people you need, right? Now it's like, okay, we can give you services coupled with the AI tool also. So you don't have to have like 10 people instead of having like 10 people, you only have 2 people.
You're right. And that pattern plays out the more complex the problem you're solving. If you're solving a very simple problem, then you don't need a lot of services. Then you can say, I'm automating 90% of your tickets, done, right?
Oh, we have tried that too. So we have tried to insert Deloitte and larger consulting companies in the mix. So there is a consulting company called Slalom.
Yeah.
The Slalom guys have physicians who go in as consultants. So we are partnering with those companies to say, you go to your end customer and say, we will provide you with service because you don't need that many physicians. You have the AI agent, you bundle it with this person.
Yeah.
But their mindset hasn't evolved yet.
Yeah.
It's some people there are getting it. Some people are not getting it.
At the heart of this stack is labor arbitrage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that is the reason why AI, coming back to the first principle, when we start, SaaS does not have labor arbitrage because intelligence is outside the stack. Right? The moment you start adding intelligence in the stack, then different level of job will have to have humans attached to it. And it's all labor arbitrage. The way you are pricing it, labor arbitrage requires either their labor to be arbitraged or you bring in arbitrage labor through partners or in-house.
The question is, how do you quantify that intel? I mean, again.
That's it.
after, like,
The answer is true north always comes back to the metric. You see the everything comes back to the metric you're trying to solve. Labor is simply like you can put a dollar on it.
No, I think it is solvable. The problem is the segmentation of enterprises in this country is too complicated. So nobody knows what the other guy is doing. It's very siloed. And that's why when we go to talk to a ED chief, we tell them you can do this many more patients. Your She says, but that's not my metric. I get measured on length of stay. So now we translated that to say your length of stay will go down by 20%. And then they are okay with that. But you go to their associate director who is our CFO, we tell him you will do 20% more patients. This is how your reimbursements will go up. Now the story changes. Now in between, if you send them the common deck that gets circulated, they are then
Confused.
that's the end. They are confused.
So
Just
please.
to add a point there, right? Pricing with AI is excessively personal, right? So
Right.
it's moving away from outcome. In fact, just last month, we recoined the word, at least in Freshworks, and we call it solution-based.
Yeah.
It's not
Well
even
said.
outcome.
Mhm.
So I'm just hearing all of these conversations, and everybody is very pertinent to the solution that you are looking for, right? And you're going to see a
End
lot
users.
more. Exactly. And you're going to see a lot more transparent pricing moving behind paywalls, right? Like you're not going to be able to just see a price that's out there, even like $1 per conversation. That is just irrelevant.
Yeah.
It is absolutely irrelevant. It is going to get very, very personal. And even with the labor arbitrage, right? I truly believe that TAM will increase. The displacement of labor will happen. But in the next 5 years, you will just see the labor working in different formats. For example, when I started pricing, there were hardly one pricing person for, like, I would say a $25-30 million company. Today, if you open LinkedIn, the amount of pricing roles I see out there is not even funny because everybody needs a pricing person. When I started, it was just IT and CX pricing. Now we have AI for CX pricing. Now we have AI for IT pricing. Jobs, I mean, it's just displacement, right? It's not going to go anywhere.
Can you speak a little bit to the operational challenges? You're in a unique position. You have deployed so many different AI pricing changes and events. What do you see as kind of the challenge? He was talking about a little bit of adoption. From your seat, what you have observed as a challenge?
Yes. First and foremost, pricing. The job of a pricing person is to increase revenue for my company. I understand that some of you are salespeople here and you look at it from a customer standpoint. For me, I sit with my CFO and the CEO and I'm like, how do I increase my revenue, right?
No, wait, for startups, it's the same guy who is the sales guy, the
I know.
CFO,
I know.
the CEO, and PO.
At least one per week. And I ask them, what are your goals? What is your revenue goal? And you have these stellar goals. You cannot come with complex pricing models. No one is going to listen to you. So to going back to Anurag's question, invert, always invert. That is my hypothesis. I think Charlie Munger says that a lot, right? Where what am I afraid of if I do this particular pricing model? Everything that we mentioned here, I see so many operational gaps. Guys, like I've literally slept and I just have sleepless nights thinking about these, right? Because it's not easy for someone to just change irrespective of how big they are, from a seat-based to a conversation-based. Even if you want to do hybrid, I know how many billing personnel are sitting in the Bangalore office, changing invoices day in and day out to get that money invoiced for the X company. So it's not an easy challenge to go after, right? So even as a salesperson, the one thing that I would say is please think about even the different models that you go pitch to customers. How are we going to be realizing that revenue to our bottom line? Because it is not easy. It is going to get
and try putting that in a model that you can explain to a VC where you'll be in 5 years.
So true.
Yeah.
So one is the conceptual challenge of explaining the new models you want to test.
Yeah.
Other challenges around implementation or discovery or?
All of them, all of the above, right? I mean, think about seat-based models have been around for 20 plus years. Take even a company like ChargeBee, which I'm sure a lot of y'all use for billing. They don't have the capability for conversation-based. So how are you going to go charge somebody? They don't have, they cannot do resolution-based today. So it is not even a challenge. It is a huge technology gap. And I do see a lot of, we were just talking, I know he has a startup in the pricing space. I see so many coming from Bangalore and Delhi in terms of just building pricing APIs. Like how do I actually go connect with ChargeBee for these conversation-based pricing that founders want to do, because that doesn't exist. And this again goes back to TAM will increase, right?
What did you say the name of the company?
Monetize 360.
So you're building pricing tools
Yeah.
to enable AI pricing,
Correct.
AI-based pricing.
And then
So
you
the
charge
stacks
based
account,
on
the
what the
technology
company
that
gets
are-
paid. Percentage of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Bangalore, I
Yes.
speak,
I'll reach
but
out.
there's
Yeah.
like they go into the depths of the operational gaps that's out there.
Yes.
And I absolutely love it because we just read a McKinsey report and like, oh yeah, 35% productivity. I'm like, dude, like that's not productivity.
Yeah.
There's so much work. Like
Mhm.
I need to hire 5 billing managers in Bangalore working 18 hours a day to fix these invoicing gaps. And the smaller the companies, it's easier to
Sure,
Anurag's
sure.
point.
Sure.
As a public company,
Yeah.
when we have to go on a quarterly basis and report numbers,
Yeah.
it's not a joke.
It's problem on the vendor side too. Siemens has still not wired my money because company wants me having.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what we would say is to collect $10, I have to spend $100.
Exactly.
Right? So,
Yeah. And that is disruption, right?
Yeah.
That is going to happen. And I think in 5 years, this problem would be relevant,
Yeah.
in my opinion. But today it's very much out there.
If I might make a quick point, when you talked about the software-defined services, right? What I found useful is to map out tasks versus complexity.
Yeah.
Right? And often as you go
Yeah.
higher in
Yeah.
complexity, there's
Yeah.
more value and more tasks. And the big challenge comes around change management. And that's where you need the software-defined services and that consulting model, right? But going back to your earlier point around agreement on outcomes, still becomes very hard.
Yes,
Right?
yes,
And
indeed.
I'm curious, how do you do that better in this agentic AI?
So the short answer would be AI agentic world. uh, Let me show you two things, then I'll answer your question,
Sure.
right? The point I was first gonna make is that AI agents are just the surface. They are the user experience layer. What's behind it can be a lot of other things other than agents, right?
Mhm.
So while the agents are hot and everybody's talking about AI agents as the interaction model, but the AI stack is much deeper than that. The reason I'm saying that is that there are a lot of companies that are just thinking AI equals agents,
Mhm.
and we're going to deploy agents, right? So the first point I was going to make is that here is the idea that from a user experience point of view, if you're going after a goal and you are reconstituting a process, you will have series of agents, like literally thousands of purpose-built agents that can go do series of tasks and orchestrate it. That part is interesting and exciting, but what people don't understand is the following. AI-enabled apps, only the last column over there is agent, right? Interacting with users. But if AI also includes, I'm just simplifying, AI includes prediction of events,
Mhm.
some automated action, right? Generation of insights, controlling of the flow. So there's so many things that are happening with AI, not just the agents, that if you want to do the AI thing, you have to have the full stack from data to model to UX.
Yeah.
And that's where things get complicated if you are going after software as a service.
Mhm.
Service as a software works if you are bringing a stack, not just agents.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Because your agents alone are not going to do it.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why most of those service as a software are account-based, high price point software that is AI stack. The playbook written by Palantir as an example, right? $10 million contract, we can bring in an army of people, but we will also bring in data integration, the compute stack underneath it. We will bring in the models, we'll bring in the agents, and we'll bring in the dashboards. And then we will bring in the experts also. But you can't do that at the price point of $500 and $10 an agent or $1 an agent, etc. Because then you're relying on other people's compute stack, other people's AI stack and models and so forth. And your AI agents will have to be naturally directed towards a narrow problem. So it's a more of a industry, what altitude of the business problem you're solving.
And the regulated industries are actually putting out a list of agents, like ARPA-H is putting out the list. They put out an RFI. So we went into them and said, you need this many agents. Now they are putting a whole spec together as to every healthcare institution will have only these agents, and then you go price those agents. So now you completely taken the control away from me in terms of outcome.
Remains to be seen how well that works.
Well, the new
That's
administration has
true.
dissolved it, but that is where it was going.
Yeah,
So the whole RPH is not.
yeah, so RPH is concept, it's not implementation.
So
There's a
Yeah, but
huge gap.
But the concept, they are taking that to the federal hospitals to implement, but
Taking
that.
10 years to get.
failure rate of many of these, without going down the history of it in healthcare, like how have the APIs worked out, right? Zero, very poorly. So they're still catching up on APIs, let alone agents, right?
Yeah.
So,
SaaS hasn't worked in healthcare.
yeah,
End
so,
of story.
anyway, this is not to, there's a lot of successful companies in healthcare. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
industry perspective
Yeah.
might not be the same as an innovator's perspective on the same problem.
Yeah, it doesn't match
Yeah.
at all.
I mean, it's right from on-prem
Yeah.
to cloud to SaaS. I mean, healthcare has it's just regulatory challenges across the board.
Anyway, we wanna close out, just mindful of the time. We've,
I thought we had whole night here.
No, actually, my tasting rang. I have to go,
Yeah.
but thank you very much.
so these were some of the topics. We're gonna close out with some, any final questions, anything for us? Okay,
Who's doing it well? Who's successful in
here, I'll ask.
specifics? I
Kirti.
mean, you mentioned the
Kirti,
challenge at the beginning, right? The
Let's,
costs are going
let
up.
that be the last question. Who do you think is doing well and what are the watch outs for doing AI pricing well? Close out.
I think there are tons of companies that are doing really good work in terms of hybrid pricing. Because again, I don't want to be very pragmatic about it, but what is pricing, right? It's about increasing your revenue and what those goals that you need to attain. So pricing models is a very small segment of a pricing person or for a CFO to be worrying about. But given that there's a lot of talk about how complex your models can be or how innovative your complex models can be, I truly believe Intercom in the CX space has really gotten it right, just because they're very clear on their ICP. I think they have a very good model as to who they're going after, why they're going after, and they're still private for a very good reason, and I think they're doing a fantastic job. From a product perspective, if you ask me, because CX and IT are my spaces, I truly believe MoveWorks is a really good company to look into in terms of employee experience. I think they started their company as an employee AI agent company, and that is their core product. That they sort of price all of the other attributes, with it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We'll close out the formal session and we'll have some more time to ask informal questions. Thank you for joining us.